When I was first learning data science, it was easy to get overwhelmed by the mountain of buzzwords and technical details, and hard to know exactly where to start. While the number of buzzwords has only seemed to increase since I started, I now have a much clearer view of the space and its essential elements. In this video, I'll answer one of the most common questions I receive, which is, how would you learn data science if you had to start over today? I can honestly say this is the exact approach I would use because I'm currently following it to learn data engineering and ML engineering. And if you're new here, welcome. I'm Shah. I make videos about data science and entrepreneurship. And if you enjoyed this content, please consider subscribing. That's a great no-cost way you can support me in all the videos that I make. I've been doing data science for the past 5 years in a few different contexts, including research, freelance, and corporate. One of the biggest challenges of learning data science is that it consists of a constantly changing ocean of technologies. The best way I found to cope with this constant change is to just get really good at learning. And the way I see it, there are 4 ways we can learn. The first way is through consuming content. This includes reading books, taking courses, watching YouTube videos. Second is through mentorship and learning from those who are ahead of you. Third is by doing, so getting your hands on the keyboard. And the fourth is by teaching. When it comes to learning a completely new subject or field, I combine these 4 methods into a 4-step strategy. Here I'm going to walk through what that might look like for data science step by step. The first step is to consume content. This is especially important if I know absolutely nothing about the field. I'm always amazed by the amount of clarity I can gain from reading one good article or watching one good YouTube video on a subject. Unfortunately, what makes a good resource will vary from person to person. For example, I prefer to read review papers and other scientific articles when available. However, if you would have given me a paper to read when I was an undergrad, I probably wouldn't have read it. And even if I did, I probably would not have gotten much out of it. So it's important to find which modalities work best for you. To get started, I'd go to Google Scholar and search something like Data Science Review. Here I'd be mainly looking for titles that sound interesting and relevant, and looking at the number of citations each article has received. To be clear, this isn't meant to be a literature review, so I'll typically pick out 1 to 3 articles that seem relevant. Next, I'd go to YouTube and search something like, what is data science? Similar to Google Scholar, I'd evaluate videos based on their title and number of views. So while doing these searches, it's important to point out that I'm not actually reading these papers or watching these videos. I'm just getting all these resources together to consume them later. To actually consume the content, I'll block time on my calendar specifically for learning. This is important because it increases the probability that I'll actually do it. I personally like to do my reading first thing in the morning, while watching YouTube videos is something I can really do anytime. Either way, I'll have my notes app open while consuming the content to take notes on key things that stand out to me, and ensuring I cite my sources in case I want to come back to them later or share it with anyone else. Although I recommend you do this kind of search for yourself, I've linked a few resources in the description below in case it's a helpful jumping off point. After getting a basic grounding of data science through consuming content, I start reaching out to professional data scientists to see if they'd be willing to talk to me about their experience. Learning from those ahead of me is one of the greatest hacks I've learned for growth. This is something that I did when first exploring entrepreneurship in the data space, and something I'm doing currently in learning data engineering and ML engineering. I found that interviewing 10 people is a good number because it gives a nice diversity of perspectives to help give a broad view of the field. But of course, getting 10 busy professionals to talk to you is much easier said than done. Here's how I would do it. I'd go to LinkedIn and search for data scientists that I'm directly connected with. Then I'd shoot them a DM saying something like, hey, hope things are going well. I'm currently doing interviews with data scientists as part of an effort to expand my technical data skills. Would you be willing to do a call sometime this month? If the person doesn't respond within a few days, I'd follow up with something like, hey, I wanted to follow up. Did you get a chance to look at my previous message? Doing this recently for data and ML engineers, more than 50% of people responded to my messages. Of course, this will vary from person to person, but if we assume that 50% of the people you reach out to respond, and of those 50%, another 50% agree to talk to you, that means you need to reach out to 40 data scientists in order to talk to 10 of them. I'm personally connected to hundreds of data scientists on LinkedIn, so this would be no problem for me. However, if I was only connected to, say, 20 data scientists, I'd take the following approach. I'd add more personalization to that initial reach out and be sure to follow up a third time for those who don't respond to the first 2 messages. This should increase the number of people that actually respond to my request. If this doesn't get the 10 interviews, I'd expand my outreach to data scientists I have at least one mutual connection with. Reaching out to strangers naturally has a lower success rate, so personalization and follow-ups are even more important for these contacts. When actually getting on the calls with these professionals, I'd ask basic questions like, what is data science? How did you get started? What kind of projects are you working on these days? What does your tech stack look like? And do you have any advice for me? I'd be sure to take notes on these calls so I can compare different interviewees' perspectives and do any deep dives into specific tools or resources that they mention. In other words, I'd jump back to step 1 to fill in any gaps that may have come up during the interviews. Consuming content and learning from others can only get you so far. Eventually, you need to get your hands on the keyboard and start doing. This is where doing a data science project comes in. If I was completely new to programming and analytics, I would start with a very basic project like creating a simple data visualization. What this might look like is installing Python on my machine, downloading an interesting data set from Kaggle, loading it in with pandas or polars, processing the data in some way, whether that's cleaning the data or doing some sort of analytics, and then finally visualizing the data with Matplotlib. If I was starting with some adjacent experience in, say, Python or statistics, I try to grab data from the real world and solve a meaningful problem. Some examples of this might be creating a model to automatically create chapters for my YouTube videos, predicting the click-through rate of a video based on the thumbnail and the title, or building a web app that allows people to do semantic search over all my YouTube videos and blogs. I find that doing projects to solve real-world problems are not only more rewarding, but much more instructive than purely academic ones. As I make progress on the project, I'd likely be jumping back to steps 1 and 2 as needed. So to either read up on a specific approach or technology, or to ask people with more experience for guidance in case I get stuck. Once I've completed my first project, I'd move on to the final step of teaching. In my opinion, teaching is the ultimate way to learn, and the main reason why I make YouTube videos. When explaining something to others, I'm forced to distill my understanding into clear and concise language. In this process, I find that I'll stumble upon gaps in my understanding that I didn't realize were there. This provides me the opportunity to bridge these gaps and learn more. The 3 teaching modalities that I found most helpful are making YouTube videos, writing Medium articles, and giving presentations. I really like the first 2 methods because I can do them anywhere at any time. The third method is also great because I get the added pressure of talking to a live audience and taking their questions. But of course, this requires a bit more work to make happen. So to keep things simple, I'd make a slide deck outlining my project and key learnings, and then make a YouTube video of me walking through it. Although many will agree that teaching is a great way to learn, most won't follow through on this. They might be thinking, what if I say the wrong thing? What are people going to say about me? What if I embarrass myself? The best strategy I've found for overcoming these fears is focusing on my own personal development and growth. In other words, it doesn't matter what other people think as long as I'm learning. And for me, these fears actually serve as fuel to help make sure that I really understand what I'm sharing. And in the inevitable case that I do make a mistake, that's beneficial too, because those public mistakes tend to stick much better than the private ones. While this 4-step strategy is simple, putting it into practice may present some unexpected challenges. To help with that, here are 3 key habits I find helpful for learning. First is to make room for it. Like I mentioned earlier, I find it critical to block time for learning to ensure that it actually gets done. For me, this has helped develop this habit for continual learning. The second is be willing to look dumb. One of the biggest mistakes I made early in my educational career was an unwillingness to look dumb. What this typically looked like was staying quiet and not asking questions when someone was telling me something I didn't really understand. When I overcame this fear in grad school, it unlocked a whole new level of learning and progress. And third, pursue curiosity. Again, data science is an ocean of technologies. Even if you spend every waking moment of everyday learning, you still wouldn't come close to learning everything. That's why I find it much more productive to pursue topics that pique my interest. This is what makes data science fun, even if the topics are technically challenging at first. So that brings us to the end. I hope this video was helpful to you in some way. If you have any data science questions, feel free to share them in the comments below, or feel free to set up some office hours using the link in the description. And as always, thank you so much for your time, and thanks for watching.